And now finally, let's look at how we can use Object.Create in order to implement a complex prototype chain, so similar to what we implemented before with classes and constructor functions. And so here I already copied this object here, which will serve as the prototype to create a new person object using Object.Create. All right, and so of course, this will basically be our parent class. And we already know that Object.Create is a bit easier to use and to understand, and so it shouldn't be too hard to implement a similar hierarchy between a person and student. So here, person proto, so this object up here, used to be the prototype of all the new person objects. But now we basically want to add another prototype in the middle of the chain. So between person proto and the object. And so what we're going to do is to make student inherit directly from person. So we're going to create now an object that will be the prototype of students. So student proto. And this will be, for now, an empty object. So Object.Create, and the prototype will be person proto. And that's it. And so now we can use this student proto to create new students. So let's create J and Object.Create, and it will inherit from student proto. And so now the student proto object that we just created earlier is now the prototype of the J object. So again, the student proto object is now the prototype of J. And the person proto object is in turn the prototype of student proto. And so therefore, person proto is a parent prototype of J, which means that it's in its prototype chain. Whoa, but that once again sounded a bit confusing. And so let's make sure that we really understand this by looking at a nice diagram again. So it all starts with the person proto object, which used to be the prototype of all person objects. But now, using Object.Create, we make it so that person proto will actually become the prototype of student proto. And what this does is that now, basically, student inherits from person. And so with this, we already established the parent-child relationship that we were looking for. Now to finish, all we need to do is to use Object.Create again, but this time to create a new actual student object. And of course, we make this student, so J in this course, inherit from student proto, which is now J's prototype. And like this, we created a nice and simple prototype chain. So J inherits from student proto, which in turn inherits from person proto. And therefore, the J object will be able to use all the methods that are contained in student proto and person proto. Now, with the scope chain correctly established, let's also add an init method to student proto. So just like we did here with person proto, so that we don't have to manually specify the properties on any new student object. So let's add that here to student proto.init. So this is going to be receiving the first name, then the birth year, and again the course. And so now we can actually use the same trick that we used before when we use constructor functions. So what I mean is to take advantage basically of this init method so that we don't have to write this same code again. So basically the child prototype can reuse this init method here from the person prototype, which is the parent prototype, right? So that is person proto.init.call, because once again, we want to set the this keyword to the this keyword in this method here. So this, and then the first name and the birth year. And then, of course, we set the course property here, which is unique to the student. So let's now use that method j.init. So j born in, let's say, 2010, and again, computer science. All right, so let's take a look. And yeah, that works. That's nice. And let's now add again the introduce method here, just so that it is similar to the other two techniques that we used earlier. So introduce is going to be a function. And let me just again grab that from here. All right. And now let's call j.introduce. And indeed, that works. And now, as you would expect, we should also be able to call j.calcH, because that method is up here in the prototype chain. And so that has got to work as well. And yeah, so 27. And one more time, just to take a look here at the prototype chain, we see that indeed it has a prototype which contains the init and the introduce methods. So these two that we just created. And this prototype in turn has its own prototype, which is then the one which contains the calcH method. And so that is indeed person proto. So this is exactly the prototype chain that we just saw earlier in the diagram. Okay, and that's actually it. So in this version, we don't even worry about constructors anymore, and also not about prototype properties, and not about the new operator. So it's really just objects linked to other objects, and it's all really simple and beautiful, if you ask me. And in fact, some people think that this pattern is a lot better than basically trying to fake classes in JavaScript. Because faking classes in the way that they exist in other languages like Java or C++ is exactly what we do by using constructor functions and even ES6 classes. But here, in this technique that I just showed you with Object.Create, we are in fact not faking classes. All we are doing is simply linking objects together, where some objects then serve as the prototype of other objects. And personally, I wouldn't mind if this was the only way of doing OOP in JavaScript. But as I mentioned earlier, ES6 classes and constructor functions are actually way more used in the real world. But in any case, it's still super important and valuable that you learned all of these three techniques now, because you will see them all in the real world still. And this also allows you to think about this on your own and choose the style that you like the best. But again, in the real world, and especially in modern JavaScript, you will mostly see ES6 classes being used now. And so, since I want to prepare you for the real world, I will start using classes from this point on.